Welcome to the 9642 podcast. This is your host, Mr. Number 9.
And this is The Fool.
This is where me and The Fool give our
Unqualified and unrequested.
ramblings on the various issues in the world of sport.
Or something like that.
Hi everyone, we are back to the bread and butter, and we're going to, we've had just an exciting week of ending fixtures for the Premier League.
Yeah.
By exciting, I mean completely unexciting if your team was not in the top 7.
Yeah.
And also anywhere below the top 2.
Yes,
Because
exactly.
those two clubs had pretty much sewn up their positions well early, and then we had a group of stragglers trying to decide who gets to play in the top 5/top 6. Manchester City, Chelsea, Newcastle, Aston Villa, and Nottingham Forest all vying for that position.
Yeah, and even then, City had sort of already ensured they were getting Champions League.
City were pretty much sure of getting a top 5 spot, so
Yeah.
there's not much difference between 3 and 5 in this point.
So yeah, it was really only like 3 games that mattered.
Yeah, the Chelsea-Nottingham Forest game was very important, and it basically, arguably, maybe the most important game since the game where Chelsea won against Newcastle to finish 4th the season before Roman Abramovich bought the club.
Yeah.
And Newcastle, despite losing, to Everton, still managed to finish in the top 5, and also win a League Cup this season. So snaps to the tune. They've had a fantastic season.
Go then.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Chelsea. Sorry, go
I
on.
was going to say Manchester United did Newcastle a favour by beating Aston Villa. So
Yes, Manchester United finally somehow beat Aston Villa. A low-key kind of rivalry between Manchester United and Aston Villa.
yeah.
Just because Aston Villa used to be such a good team back in the 80s and 90s and 70s. Aston Villa, after having some great European nights, doing some great performances in Europe, getting through to the knockouts, getting knocked out by PSG, just like every other European club. They were to finish 6th, which I think is probably fair for their season.
Yeah.
I think Aston Villa will. They also made the semi-finals of the FA Cup, so they've had a pretty good season all round as well. I think next season in the Europa League is for a English club as Spurs and Manchester United have basically shown, the level between Premier League and your Europa League is so bad. The Champions League, you're competing against the best of the best in Europe.
Yeah.
But in the Europa League, you can almost overpower everyone. Like Manchester United went undefeated in the Europa League until the final against Spurs. Like, just tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah.
About how big a gap there is, and Ruben Amorim has also said so. And Unai Emery is like a Europa League god, really. So Aston Villa, they should be aiming to win that Europa League next season, so they could get a 6th. Regardless, finishing top 5 is so hard.
Yeah.
Like, so hard. I don't think next season you're going to get as bad a season as we got from Tottenham Hotspur.
Yeah.
I don't know about Manchester United, but they don't have European football to deal with, so they might come back up and compete for a European spot.
I feel like that's probably true. They have only just the one competition to focus on. Always helps. Look,
Manchester United could get worse, obviously. Like, this just seems to be a club that's got a lot of problems. everybody knows about them because everybody talks about Manchester United. I don't understand online Red fans who complain about people who talk about Manchester United. I'm just like, dude, this is like walking past a garbage fire and just them saying, they're saying we're obsessed with Manchester. These content creators are obsessed with Manchester United. It's like, no, if I walk past a garbage fire, I'm gonna say, look at that garbage fire. That doesn't make me obsessed with garbage fires. Because basically that's what Manchester United have been for the last few seasons. We didn't think it could get worse than Erik ten Hag finishing 8th, but we would have given our right arm for 8th place this season in the Premier League. Some absolutely woeful performances. We'll get to Manchester United, but I think Aston Villa finishing 6th. That's pretty much, I think, deserved. Nottingham Forest, we were hoping that they would finish in the Champions League.
Yeah.
We were secretly hoping they could, at least I was secretly hoping they could win the Premier League.
Yeah, at some point that was a dream, right? It looked good early on. Yeah.
But they've still had a really, really good season. Once again, next season they won't have Europe to deal with, so...
No, they're in the Conference League, so they get... a good chance for a trophy as well.
Oh, they get to the Conference League. Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I'm pretty sure they get Conference
League
as well.
Aston Villa get the Conference League because they finished 6th.
No, they get Europa League along with Crystal Palace.
So Crystal Palace, yeah, okay. Oh, because Nottingham, obviously, because Newcastle finished in the top 5, of course. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. If Newcastle had finished outside, they would have just gone into the Conference League. And probably won. So Nottingham Forest, you're right, absolutely within a chance. There's also less games in the Conference League to play.
Yeah.
And if the gap between the Premier League and the Europa League is vast, it is absolutely continental.
Yes.
When it comes to the Conference League and the Premier League. There's a reason why ever since the Conference League has been around that we've had a English team in the final, I think 3 out of 4 years.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, West Ham famously won. Leicester lost in the final to they lost in the Leicester lost in the final to the very first one, to Jose Mourinho, and Mourinho. That's basically the explanation.
Yeah,
for that.
Exactly.
Jose Mourinho's Roma, and then the season that Atalanta won, they beat Bayer Leverkusen, and Atalanta managed to beat Aston Villa. Like, Aston Villa were in the semi-finals. That's just And this season you're gonna have Chelsea in the finals, or you already have Chelsea in the finals. So, and hot favourites to win that final.
Yeah, one would hope.
Obviously, anything can happen in a one-off football game, but it would be a shock if Chelsea didn't win.
Yeah, it would be a shock. You say one-off football game, anything could happen, but you would think we should take that out and pick up our third European trophy.
Yeah. I mean, they're playing Real Betis, who finished in the top 4 in La Liga, so they are playing a top-tier team.
Yeah.
At least. But this is the thing, an English club shouldn't be facing anything that they can't just overwhelm until the semi-finals. Really. Like, that's when you'll meet, like, a La Liga club or a Serie A club.
Yeah, exactly.
Or a Bundesliga club. But the Bundesliga clubs don't seem to be taking the Conference League that seriously, whereas, it's a pathway into the Europa League. If you're a club like, Nottingham Forest, you get there. If you don't qualify for the Champions League next season, you're in the Europa League if you win the Conference League.
Yeah.
You could win that, maybe, and then...
Yeah, exactly.
You're in the Champions League then,
Yeah, exactly.
It's all coming up Millhouse.
It's all coming up Millhouse.
But it's basically that's the position. So Nottingham Forest still get a European, qualify for Europe. Villa qualify for Europe, and obviously the top 5 get into the Champions League. I think Newcastle deserved it. I think after winning the League Cup, they didn't rest on their laurels. They just got better and better at that point, and like they had the right reinforcements in January, of course, but also they got people back from injury. Newcastle, if they can keep and they should be able to keep Alexander Isak, or at least sell him for $120 million. So
Yeah.
that should be good money for reinforcements. Like Newcastle are in a good position.
You would think so.
Yeah. For next season, I think. Chelsea, once again, it looked great at first. And then Maresca, like, some of the most entertaining football I've seen Chelsea ever play. Like, very non-Chelsea, by the way.
Yeah.
They played real chaos ball, but those games were freaking fun to watch. And then, like, Maresca goes, no, I don't want to play basketball on a football pitch. And then they went slow, and everybody hated it.
Yeah.
And sure, he's made Champions League. I don't think anyone in Chelsea likes it. Like, Chelsea don't mind if you play counter-attack football. Because as long as it's back-to-back counter-attacks, that can be exciting. Chelsea don't mind if you play defensive counter-attack football either, where like you get the ball, and we hit you, because that's also exciting because there's tension in that.
Yeah.
Cool. But like control for control's sake, I don't think Chelsea fans have ever really liked that. Like Andres Villas-Boas tried to implement that, and you had a few others try to do a more control style for Chelsea, and it's never really stuck.
No.
Now, so it'll be interesting to see how it works with Maresca next season. Assuming he doesn't get fired. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
At this point what Todd Bowley will do. But as much as we mock Chelsea, like, I did commend them in the last podcast we talked about football, because, you know, they're doing interesting things, like their women's team being spun off and being an independent entity with its own money. Like, it's incredible to think, like, Chelsea's women's team probably 20 years ago didn't really exist, or were a fully amateur outfit, and they're now a $200 million, like, you know, $200 million entity. Like, it just shows how much long-term investment, and it gives you that reward.
Yeah. And I
mean, that's one of the great accomplishments of the Abramovich regime, but Todd Bowley hasn't, like, dropped it. He's basically gone, yeah, we should own this. It's one of the good things about Chelsea.
Yeah. And like,
also, we should shout out, while talking about women's football, Arsenal's women's team won the Champions League, the first English team to win the Women's Champions League.
Yeah, nice. That is good work.
The women have brought a European trophy to the red side of North London.
Yeah, the good work by them. Really, I mean, yeah,
Absolutely.
I know the Chelsea team, like, we've won the Women's Super League, English Women's Super League for many years in a row. But yeah, we haven't managed to put it with the likes of the Barcelona women's team or anything. So good work by Arsenal, really.
Yeah, look, the only team that came close to winning against Chelsea in the league was when Manchester United came second, and it was like by 1 point.
Yeah.
And that was the season the Manchester United women's team won the FA Cup as well. And then promptly sold all their good players. Yeah.
That's the way to do it.
That's the way to do it, exactly. I mean, we didn't need a title in Old Trafford at all, did we? We're not absolutely starving for one. Not at all. Because, like, it's one of those things, like, Lyon fans, they go, yeah, I mean, yeah, sure, Lyon's not won Liga in ages, but, you know, our women's team is undefeated, you know? Like, we've got one of the best teams in Europe.
Yeah, exactly. So.
And, like, if you're a real fan of the club, you'll support whichever team, right? Like, that's the whole point.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Now, going down from the Europeans, so Brighton just missed out on the European spot, but they've had a pretty decent season as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Bournemouth, as per usual, like those are the two. These are basically your Brighton, Bournemouth, Brentford. These are like your nerdy students that are always sitting in the front of the queue, doing their homework, putting in the work. You know, you don't expect them to like not hand in their assignments. They're handed in on time. They're always of a particular standard.
Yeah.
I think we can give all these clubs at least a B plus for the three Bs.
Yeah, well, exactly. You know,
We should rate their seasons, right? Liverpool, surely A plus.
A plus.
Give a new manager.
Yeah.
Didn't get too many reinforcements, but amazing achievement.
Yeah. Ran away with the league. A plus.
Yep.
Easy.
Easily. A plus, easy A.
Mm.
Arsenal, semi-finals of the Champions League.
Yeah.
Second place. Look, I know the fans are disappointed because Spurs won a trophy and they haven't, but
Yeah.
I think you gotta give them at least an A.
Yeah, I think they get an A for the season, really. You say it's successful all the way, it just didn't pick up a trophy anywhere. That's the only thing that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So, we'll give them an A.
Yeah. The only downside for Liverpool is losing that League Cup final to Newcastle, really.
Yeah.
And I guess losing to Plymouth Argyle in the FA Cup.
There's that too.
I mean, at least in Europe, you lost to PSG. Like, there's no shame in that. PSG look like the best team in Europe at the moment.
Exactly.
Now, Manchester City, I think, if we were doing it if Pep was grading it, he'd give them a C. But I think we can be a bit more generous, at least an A minus. Like, given where they were, managing to get to third and 71 points is really good.
Yeah, no, exactly. I say at Christmas we're talking about, you know, their horrible run of form. They didn't win for 10 matches in a row. You know, it was looking pretty dire then. So turned it around the second half as City tend to do. So yeah. B plus seems A minus. That sort of level seems fine.
I think A minus because Manchester City have high standards, so A minus. I don't think B plus. Like if we're not gonna say they're at the same grade as Brighton, Bournemouth, and Brentford. We're giving these threes straight Bs, right? Like or B pluses. Yeah. Chelsea, Newcastle. Chelsea also got new manager, new system. I think if we're gonna, I would potentially say A minus for them.
I think A minus. Get back to Champions League.
And they're
going
to potentially get a European trophy. So got to a European final. So that's I think already an A minus. Newcastle, I think A plus. They've got a trophy, Champions League. You know, Bob's your uncle.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe A minus just because it's fifth. The Champions League. They'll be a bit disappointed how they finished the season. You know, 2 losses on the trot to finish. But stayed in Champions League football. So I'm happy with an A for them. You say trophy, Champions League football, can't really complain.
Yeah. Aston Villa, they went far in the Champions League. They're in Europe again. They're not in the Champions League places. They'll be, I think, rightfully disappointed. B minus.
Yeah, I think B minus. You say they were in Champions League, now they're not. But as we were saying, getting to Champions League, even with 5 spots for England, is still a tough ask.
Yeah.
So probably even, given that they've still got European...
There'll be 6 teams from England in the Champions League next year.
Yeah. And even then, it's still hard to get into.
Yeah.
So, keeping European football, keeping, Europa League as well, I think that's good. So I'd probably look at a B, because, still Europe still got a good pathway through to the Champions League with winning a season in the
options.
Yeah.
Next up, Nottingham Forest. Look, they qualified for Europe and they never threatened relegation. They've been solid all season. Like, they'll be a bit disappointed to go as low as they did eventually, but that squad did get tired. I think that's fair, but like Nuno's probably manager of the season,
Yeah,
and I think Nottingham Forest at least an A.
I would say it'd be an A as well. I mean, really, nobody's expecting them to be top half of the table,
Yeah,
really, right?
uh,
And they
I
were
think yeah,
threatening to be actual genuine title contenders at one point. Stayed in the
yeah.
Champions League spots all the way through. Yeah, disappointing last few games, but still, overall the season's an amazing success. They got into Europe, so
Yeah, and also they've well overperformed their wage bill,
oh yeah,
so we
exactly.
have to give them that.
Yeah,
Like I said, we give the three Bs after them, the three B clubs Bs. I
yeah,
think we can give Bournemouth a B plus. They're the club that's overperformed their wage bill the most.
yeah, yeah,
It'll be interesting to see what happens to them because obviously a bunch of their players are well sought after. They're gonna be bought, but Bournemouth are a really well-run club.
mhm,
We know how good their ownership group is.
yeah,
Rest in peace, Auckland FC after the weekend.
yeah. Pity for that, but that's the way the A-League finals football
That's,
works, right? It can come down to
that
one
is the
game.
way that is how finals football works.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I would expect Bournemouth to keep continuing to do well next season.
yeah, yeah.
Fulham also B,
B.
easy B for Fulham, I think.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think a B.
Crystal Palace surely A plus.
A plus. FA Cup into Europe. Only finished 12, but still A plus. Like just pure gold.
They're the champions of our heart.
Yeah, exactly.
And reffing controversy. What reffing controversy?
I didn't see anything. It was fine.
It was fine. It's just like that same weekend where Australian league fans are like, reffing's useless. New Zealand league fans are, I don't know what you're talking about.
But no,
Seems
seemed fun to be picked out.
But yeah, easily A plus. Like 120 odd years, first ever trophy. Now everybody who reads the history of the FA Cup will see there's a club called Crystal Palace that won the FA Cup in 18 something. That is not this Crystal Palace. They are not related at all.
Yeah, yeah.
That was a club literally based out of the old Crystal Palace, and who were an amateur club. And then this Crystal Palace club was founded, they thought, in 1905, and then they looked through their documents, and it was like apparently 1880 something. It's like Crystal Palace. Come on.
It's a big differential in time.
Yeah. What do you mean you were like 30, almost 30 years older than you said you were?
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I was also going to say, we say Crystal Palace finished 12th, but that's only 3 points off Bournemouth and 9.
Yeah.
From Bournemouth down to Crystal Palace, there's just 3 points covering those ones. I mean, it's another nice close set of teams, like the sort of 4th through to 7th being super tight as well. So, yeah, finishing at the bottom of that little group is not really, 12th is a little bit worse than what potentially that season is. I mean, so, yeah. But, yeah, to say, at the end, though, the actual main good thing out of the season was the FA Cup win.
Yeah, and Crystal Palace are also going to upgrade their stadium. It will become, from my understanding, in the 50K mark.
Oh, nice.
In Selhurst Park, and they're gonna have like a giant glass facade as a tribute to the old Crystal Palace that they're named after.
Nice.
It looks like an awesome stadium. Exciting times for Crystal Palace. Like, match day is already awesome in that place. It's one of the best atmospheres in the Premier League.
Yeah.
People love going there. People love, if you live near the area, it's like one of the best season tickets because good value for money, great atmosphere if you're a neutral fan. And the team play reasonably fun football. Glasner is gonna take the club further, so unless he gets picked by a higher up Premier League team. I think at the moment there's a lot of managers, I think, in the Premier League who, because they've seen what happened to managers like Graham Potter and Nuno,
Mm.
and they're just basically like, oh, and Unai Emery of all people, and they're just basically, "Yeah, maybe we stick to our small club where we kind of get a lot more control and we know the owners and we know the directors and
Yeah.
everything kind of fits the way we like." So obviously it'll be interesting to see how that plays out for Crystal Palace in the off season. Now I don't know if their new stadium is going to be ready for next season. It might be the season after, but I know they are planning to start building in the summer. So exciting
Yeah.
times if you are an Eagle fan.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have Everton. Come on. Surely we got to give these guys a B2, like not even threatening relegation. This
I
like
know.
easy peasy, staying in the Premier League. Yeah.
Yeah. What was this? Who was talking about them potentially being relegated at the beginning of the season? I mean, come on.
Impossible.
It's impossible. Never seemed likely. They always staying.
Yeah. Only idiots said that they would potentially get relegated. Like 48 points, even in the old style, they would have easily been stayed in the Premier League with their current points total.
Exactly.
And then it's like you gotta love the ending. They got back together. This is like Ross and Rachel getting back together at the last episode of Friends. Like David Moyes coming back to Everton, getting them up, leading them to that unbeaten run. You're just like,
Yeah. Nice.
good stuff, David Moyes. Good stuff. You're back where you're actually appreciated, and
Yeah,
hopefully,
exactly.
and they're gonna be in their new stadium next season, which looks fantastic. And it's exciting times for Everton. Hopefully, they've been in financial turmoil for the last 5 to 6 years, and look, it looks like they're about to turn a corner. So good luck to them.
Yeah.
The next up, we have West Ham United. Once again, I think let's just give them a C, maybe C minus.
Yeah. I mean, they
for
were.
a club with the quality of players they have and their wage bill. It's an underperform.
It's definitely an underperform.
They never looked like they were gonna be relegated, but that's saying nothing given how poor the clubs promoted were.
Yeah. Exactly.
West Ham. The only reason you're getting a C is we're gonna be brutal to all the teams coming after. Like, if you're
Yeah.
a fan of any of the teams that fall below, other than Spurs,
Other than Spurs, exactly. Yeah.
you're about to get... Okay,
I
Manchester
think-
United.
I was going to say, you're right. West Ham gets a nice
C.
pass grade on the grounds that they're not any of the other clubs below them.
Yeah. Manchester United and Wolves were the only... I'm gonna give Manchester United an F minus. I'm gonna give Wolves an F, just because Wolves have a lower wage bill at least.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
an excuse. Manchester United have had some injuries, changed manager. Obviously, at some point in the season, both Manchester United and Spurs just gave up on the Premier League, and
Yeah.
Ruben Amorim was open about it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ruben Amorim wasn't open about it. He said we're still gonna try. So this is why they get an F minus. Because that was apparently them trying. Because Ange Postecoglou's like, yeah, we're just focusing on Europa, mate. Like, second season I get you a trophy. That was the deal.
Yeah.
And yeah, he delivered, man. Ange is the big winner at the end.
Yeah.
Everyone else who doubted him is a clown.
Exactly.
Because obviously this was a Spurs United game. I was speaking to a mutual friend of ours a lot running in the run-up, and I just told him, he was just like, this is the El Sacico derby, and I'm like, look, I'll be honest with you, even if Spurs win, I reckon Ange is getting fired, and even if Manchester United lose, I reckon Ruben Amorim's keeping his job, and it looks like I'm gonna be right.
Yeah.
And I think for Ange, just he's basically been building his CV in the second half of the season, right? He knows he's going to be fired.
Yeah.
He didn't need to. He gave up on a bit of his. He didn't give up on his philosophy because he's like, look, this is how I play. This is the thing. But in the final, he did give it up and showed, I can be like, flexible when I have to be, like when everybody's watching and important. And he showed a masterclass how to win a game
Yeah, exactly.
against Manchester United. So, well done to him. I think every Wolves fan is disappointed with their season. They could have done so much better, especially in a season like this where you've got so many clubs above you like Spurs and Manchester United playing so poorly. Could have at least done a top 10 finish. But, they are where they are. And once again, they're lucky to not be relegated because everybody else is so bad.
Yeah.
The 3 teams that are being relegated.
Yeah.
Spurs, if they hadn't won the Europa League, would have gotten F minus, right? Like,
Yeah.
There's no question. Like below 40 points. For shame, Spurs. For shame. But you won the Europa League, so B minus.
B minus, I think. Yeah. Like they've got. I could see them Spurs fans going, "Yeah, we had a shit season. Everything's horrible, but Champions League football next year, baby. Yeah." So
Pretty much.
yeah, they say you can't. That's there's basically 2 targets, right? There's win the Premier League, well 3 targets: win the Premier League, win a trophy, make Champions League spots. Tottenham scored 2 out of those 3.
Yeah.
So yeah, just because
Now,
that first one they were way out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we do have to put a proviso that both Manchester United and Spurs' position is a bit artificial. They are artificially worse than they would be if they didn't have Europa League to focus on.
Yeah.
If they were focused on if they were kicked out of the Europa League and could only really, League was where they had to play for pride, that's where you'd hope they would have a better performance.
You would have thought, yeah. As I say, they had something else going on, and that's when you compare them to the ones around them, Everton, West Ham, Wolves. Expect them to be a lot better than them if they were only focused on it. I mean, so yeah. The others were just doing their own thing.
Yeah. Now, bottom 3, where we go? F minus.
Do we have a G grade? H? Z? I don't know. Yeah. F mini minuses.
This is like, back in when we used to be in high school where they just, after mock exams, they'd take a bunch of students and be like, maybe don't sit for the bursary exam, opt out. Because you're going to pull the school's grade curve, massively.
Yeah. Maybe the subject's not for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was it. Yeah, so I was a bit disappointed in all those teams. Especially Leicester. At the beginning of the season, I thought Leicester, I think we both did, thought Leicester might be able to put it with the rest of the Premier League.
We thought Leicester could have pushed through because they had Steve Cooper, the man who keeps you up when you get promoted. But then they fired him for Ruud van Nistelrooy.
Yeah, they did do that, and that was their first great mistake.
That was their absolute first great mistake.
Yeah, it's just silly. But yeah, still could have thought better from them, but the entire season was just a write-off for all of them. Just
absolutely
horrible for all of them.
And Southampton, come on.
Yeah.
At some point, I was hoping you basically beat Derby's record.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't even succeed at failing.
Yeah.
They could have failed
that would
worse.
have been the story, but
yeah.
How bad, just ridiculous given how awesome they were in the Championship last season and how absolutely terrible they are in Southampton. Leicester, Ipswich, you could argue they're here a year early.
Yeah.
So Ipswich I'll give an F+, a D+. They still fail because they got relegated, but they're probably relegated a year early because they did a straight-up relegation promotion. And these young players, the ones who don't leave, will get that, those mileage on their legs. And maybe if they play well in the Championship next season, Luton is a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
For relegated clubs. And with the parachute payments, if they can keep a decent amount of their players, And like obviously they're gonna lose players like Liam Delap. That's just a given, I think. But I think his buyout clause is, even if they're in the championship, is pretty high. So,
Hmm.
sorry, not Liam Delap, Rory Delap.
Rory Delap.
Yep. Beg your pardon. So, Ipswich, I go, yeah, you're getting relegated, but you'll do something next season. Leicester, once again, I'm like, okay, maybe you'll do something next season because you did pretty good. And you're unlucky that your manager got poached from you right at the beginning of the season, and then you made the terrible decision in management firing Steve Cooper.
Yeah.
Like, so there was a bunch of problems up ahead, but Southampton, come on. Come on, Southampton, like, this is a club we kind of did expect to come straight back in the Premier League from the Championship because they're savvy, they're well run, and like, sure, being relegated, they would have gotten a failing grade as well, but this bad, like, it's really bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I remember the season when Derby got relegated. They were so bad that West Ham got relegated despite having 44 points.
Yeah.
Because there were so many points distributed amongst the rest of the table. Like, unfortunately, all three teams were, like, so early relegated, and they never looked like they would not be relegated.
Yeah. I think maybe very, like, even leading up to Christmas, it was starting to, there was maybe a little bit of, with Wolves, we're still sort of bouncing around near that, but I don't think anybody, but maybe Wolves were in the bottom three early on, but especially post-Christmas, there hasn't been anybody else in the bottom three. And then they say, especially Southampton's relegation came super early, and then the other two followed pretty quickly afterwards. So
Yeah. They didn't even get to 30 points. Like, we're not even talking about the old 40-point mark,
yeah,
old-fashioned.
at least it's on 25 points. That's been the bottom team in past years sometimes. Yeah, maybe a few years back. Normally, bottom teams high teens, and then the others are mid high 20s or low 30s. But yeah, like 25 being 18th is just, that says it all, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, this is why, like, Spurs is like, it's for shame, right? Like, how bad the teams below you were, and you couldn't even manage 40 points.
Exactly. Yeah, and also
but,
lucky
you got
for
the
Spurs.
Europa League, so what?
Yeah, there's that. I was gonna say lucky for Spurs because the three below them were so bad. Otherwise, that's potentially close to relegation itself. But at the same time, won the Europa League, so Champions League football no matter what.
Yeah, and next season we have a return of Leeds United to look forward to.
Yep.
Sunderland won the championship, and it's escaping me who was the last team to.
It's Leeds and Burnley both come up automatic.
Burnley, sorry, that's right.
And Sunderland won the playoff game.
Yeah, Sunderland won the playoff against Sheffield United. It was 3 northern teams coming straight back up into the league. That'd be quite interesting, given like we had basically teams from the Midlands and the South last time.
Yeah.
Burnley, I'm kind of. If these 3 teams, one of these 3 teams can't stay up in the Premier League next season, you can basically say the pyramid's broken.
Yeah.
Right? Because Leeds United would be, I think, if they manage to stay up, they'd be the first team without a parachute payment to stay up, because they only had 2 seasons of parachute payments, and this was the season where they didn't have any.
Yeah.
Obviously, last season Ipswich got promoted without parachute payments, but they didn't stay up. I think the last team to get promoted without parachute payments and not get relegated was Nottingham Forest, but don't quote me on that.
Not sure on that either.
It was maybe Nottingham Forest and Leeds did it in that same season. But,
yeah.
it's getting a bit hazy. Once again, Steve Cooper with Nottingham Forest.
Yeah,
There you
yeah.
go. And he did the same for Bournemouth. Like, this guy just does this. Like, why would you fire him?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
don't keep him on. Like, one season, let him keep you up, keep that Premier League cash, and you've, like, cemented yourself. Then, get another manager.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Leicester City, I do expect them to do well next season. Ipswich, interesting to see, and maybe they get promoted a second time. We've seen that happen with teams like Burnley. They get relegated and then they come back up and stay for a few seasons. Burnley, except they could also do pretty well next. Both Burnley and Leeds could do pretty well next season. The Sunderland, well, yeah, it's going to be a very cool season of Sunderland till I die.
Yeah.
But do you even think any of them can? Like, it's very difficult for me to think about, like, realistically, Spurs are not going to be that bad next season.
Yeah, exactly.
Arguably, neither are Manchester United, and Wolves just, have a secret one power-up they get after January.
Yes,
and then they stay up.
So,
can't explain how, but that's what happens every season.
Yeah. And Everton seem to have managed to find a way to...
yeah, and they've got the right guy in charge. David Moyes is not getting relegated with Everton.
He's not getting relegated with Everton, so they seem to be doing fine. Wolves, seem to have some secret formula to keep it. Whether West Ham is as bad, and they get dragged into it.
Crystal Palace, because they have Europe?
Yeah, maybe.
Crystal Palace are basically the Preston North End of the Premier League. They're just gonna be mid-table. That's just what it is.
Every now and then they flirt with relegation, but then they don't.
Every now and then they flirt with 13th place or 11th place, but they always end up 12th. Like, they know what they like.
Exactly.
I don't see that happening. Once again, they seem to be really well run. It'll be like, obviously we haven't seen their transfer windows. I've been watching a lot of people talk about the pyramid in England, where some of them have. There's been some YouTubers, this Burnley fan, I can't remember who he is, was basically saying there isn't a big 6 or a big 8 in English football. There's basically a big 17.
Yeah. That makes
because
a lot of sense.
He's basically gone like we're at the point of diminishing returns really for money, because you only have 11 players on the pitch.
Yeah.
And your wage bill is not, your wage bill is, because it's not transfer window, right? It's wage bill that indicates generally success.
Yeah.
And your wage bill gap is not as big as it was back in the day of the Premier League. 17th place versus top place.
Yeah.
And especially when you compare them to other clubs in Europe, like the quality of players you're getting is, and managers especially.
Yeah.
So this is the situation he reckons, and he says that if Leeds United or Burnley, don't stay up in the Premier League next season, he's basically like, I think the pyramid's broken. Like, it's almost going to be impossible. Leeds are like the club that have money to spend.
Yeah.
They might break the rule. Like, Nottingham Forest only did it by breaking the rules, and good on them.
Yeah.
Like, points deductions, we'll take it. We're not getting relegated. Like, 8-point deduction. Like, imagine Spurs got an 8-point deduction. They'd avoid relegation by 5 points.
Yeah. Exactly.
And we both agree that a 10-point deduction is unfair, because that is basically receivership.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you shouldn't get the same punishment as a club in receivership. Like, that is actually an unfair punishment.
Yeah.
So, that is the table in Europe, in England. Moving on to La Liga, one of the best seasons of La Liga we've had in a long time. Barcelona are back, baby.
Yeah.
Look, I said this. I think this is Lamine Yamal's world, and we're all just living in it. I've been telling people like Lamine Yamal is the most talented. Last year I said he's the most talented 17-year-old I'd seen since R9, the original Ronaldo.
Yeah.
Because like 17-year-old R9 was ridiculous, and
Yes.
he won the Ballon d'Or. So I'm not the only person who thinks that.
Exactly. No. Yeah. You can't argue with R9 and his
Lamine
amazingness.
Yamal. I don't know if Lamine Yamal's better than him, but Lamine Yamal's the best player since him at that age bracket.
Yes.
And he's incredible. He's clearly like one of the emotional leaders of the club, and the club's back to this young core of La Masia graduates, almost because they have to. It's crazy to me, like end of last season, Xavi was just like, he had to leave. Like it's such a sad way for a legend of the club to leave.
Yeah.
Because he's like, I'm gonna leave next season, and then Barcelona sign him to make him change his mind and sign him to a new deal, and then fire him anyway. Like, come on, man, how dare you treat Xavi like that?
Yeah. No, that's just crazy.
And so he leaves, and it looks like Barcelona are in peril. Nobody knows what's gonna happen to them. How's the money gonna work? How's the team gonna work? Hansi Flick's just like, yep, I got this.
No problems.
No problems. We just play fun football and win. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like, it's just that easy.
Didn't you know?
I mean, he's brought the imprint, his style, but he's adapted to the Barca style. Like Hansi Flick, after having a disappointing time with the German nationals, I mean, like, amazing time with Bayern Munich, where he won the treble. Then had a disappointing time with the German national team. Kind of had to prove to everybody once again that he is as good a manager as he is. And dang, Barcelona looked at one point like the best team in Europe.
Yes.
They were the most fun team to watch in Europe. Inter Milan arguably just had a team that was like the rock to their scissors.
Yes.
Like, Barca had the youngest team in the Champions League in terms of like average age, and Inter had the oldest team in terms of average age in the knockout stages.
Yeah.
So ultimate clash of styles, but yeah, Inter get through. But Barcelona, fantastic season. Surely we gotta give them an A+.
Yeah.
Like,
Easy.
coming back, given their situation, like
Yeah.
and like Liverpool, new manager coming in, and easily beating Real Madrid, like winning both Clásicos and winning the Copa del Rey final. Like,
Yeah. Exactly.
that's a great season for the Blue and Reds. The Real Madrid, they're gonna be disappointed. Carlo Ancelotti resigning from the club, or left with mutual accord, and he goes to manage Brazil. How fun will that be?
That'd be super fun.
Somehow buying the best player in the world in Kylian Mbappe and getting worse. That's a classic Real Madrid trope, isn't it? Like, they already
Yes.
had the best team in the world, and then they buy the best player and somehow get worse.
Yeah, exactly. You're right, that is like the classic Real Madrid trope. I don't know
Yeah.
how many times they've managed to do that.
And but the club still finished second. They're going to be super disappointed with how their European campaign went. And obviously they got to the finals of the Copa del Rey, but you'd expect Real Madrid to do that. Like, this is Real Madrid. So I think you could only give them a B.
Yeah, I think so
Really?
too. Yeah.
Atletico, classic campaign. Just gets to third place easily, easy gap. Play, the team. I don't know. I feel like Atletico are going to be even better next season. They did well in Europe as well. Can't give them anything more than an A. I think A for Atletico.
Yeah, for Atletico.
And their
They
sister club, Athletic Club Bilbao, get to the final the final legacy spot.
yeah.
I believe the second country is still Italy with that coefficient spot.
I know Google's suggesting that it's Spain's. They've got 5 spots. Yeah. So I don't know who's got. I would have thought it was Italy as well, but maybe.
Oh, I guess Betis did make a final.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe they've just Spain's just managed to um to sneak themselves in, I guess.
Yeah,
Have a
so
look.
England's at the top, and the
Yeah. Mm.
looking at the
Yeah, no.
Euro
Looking at the rankings, suggesting Italy's still second.
UEFA.com.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's in the last 5 years. Okay.
No, that should still
Italy's
count.
still
It's
second.
24, 25. No, yeah, I say look at the UEFA
No,
rankings.
Spain is 23 points and Italy are 21 points. Okay, that makes sense. So
That was
Spain
last
are
year.
second.
All right. I
24,
thought
25 this season.
this season, yeah, but I thought the points were calculated over the past 5.
That
But
is for your number of spots for your association,
I see.
but for the legacy spot, it's only the last season.
Oh, I
So
see.
basically,
I see.
it basically prevents it from being like a boys' club, and it just means, if you clubs from one particular country do well one season, they get rewarded with an extra spot the next season.
I see. I see.
But okay, that makes sense. So Spain, I also like thinking about it intuitively. I'm just like, okay, yeah, because Barcelona made a semi-final, and um, Athletic Bilbao made a semi-final, and Betis are in a final. So that kind of tracks.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing they had more clubs reach the group stage, as they usually will have people like Real Betis and Sevilla just power through. Well, not that Sevilla were in Europe this season, I don't think. And Athletic Club, 4th place. Also, they got to a semi-final. They're going to be disappointed they didn't make the final, which was being held in their stadium, but can't complain.
Yeah.
I think another A for Athletic Club.
Yes.
And Villarreal, Champions League for them as well. Welcome back to the Champions League, Villarreal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Finishing 5th. Can't give them anything more than an A, less than an A, I don't think, because that's a... And because Barcelona won the Copa del Rey, I assume Real Betis is in the Europa League.
Yeah. It appears that way.
And Celta Vigo should also be in the Europa League, and Rayo Vallecano are in the Conference League. So congratulations to all 3
Yeah. Yeah.
of those clubs as well. Like, can't give them A's. They'll probably all Betis maybe gets an A. That's a really good season for them because they're also finals of the Conference League.
Exactly.
So they might get in if they won the Conference League and hadn't, like, they get to the Europa League regardless of the result, and Chelsea's in the Champions League regardless of the result. So both are they're just playing for glory in that final.
Exactly.
And Celta Vigo making a Europa League spot's actually pretty awesome, I think, to be fair. So should maybe give them an A. Them and Rayo Vallecano solid B for making it to Europe.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
But Spanish clubs doing better this season than Italian clubs, but the English clubs are miles ahead. Like, obviously you have 3 English clubs in the final, and you had Arsenal make a semi-final.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And Arsenal beat Real Madrid as well, so Liverpool and Aston Villa all made it past the group stage in the Champions League as well.
Yeah.
I think all the English clubs made it past the group stage, even Manchester City, though they didn't do well after making it out the group stage.
Yeah. No, everybody made it past group stage. Yes.
Yeah. And because England in the coefficient 29 points, that's almost like it's more than it's just around 6 points more than Spain, who finished second.
Exactly. I think that's definitely, yeah, that appears to be the most coefficient points of a single year for the last 5 years by quite
Yeah,
some bit.
yeah,
And normally it's
yeah.
last year it was Spain had 23.8. Oh no, England still had 29 points last. Oh no, it's this year. Last year, this year had 21. The rest were all below 20. Even
I mean,
before a couple of 20s, but yeah.
it does track. If you think about it, Chelsea
Yeah,
won a Champions League, so did Manchester City. Um, and then you think about, like, there was a couple of seasons before then when Liverpool and Spurs were in the Champions League final.
yeah. Oh no, like the last 5 years, England's had more than 20 points every year except for the 23-24 season, so last year when they only had 17 points.
Yeah, and even then, that's still third best in Europe.
Yeah.
Moving on from La Liga, we go to Serie A,
Yeah,
the best league,
the best league.
without question. And we get another great performance from Napoli,
Yeah.
winning the Serie A again. And their third Scudetto and their second one that we've watched in the last 5 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Incredible performance. I feel a bit bad for Inter because they've also had a really, really good season, but at one point looking like they were going to do the treble,
Yeah.
but not to be for them. But, I mean, Napoli obviously A plus. Antonio Conte, like, we don't know how long him and De Laurentiis can pretend to like each other at Napoli, but they've lasted the season.
Yeah.
He's already saying that he might leave, which is, like, I think an astute move by Antonio.
Definitely.
And well, this is like, Napoli are like this incredible story, right? They're owned by a film director who bought them when they were just about to get relegated in the fourth tier of the Italian league, and he slowly invested them and got them all the way up to winning a Scudetto, and then now they've won two under him. Like, he's the guy in charge, but he's very vocal, and he he's had issues with his relationships with managers before, and to the point where I think the previous manager who won, Sarri, let's look at him up. Yeah, Spalletti, Luciano Spalletti, he basically took a sabbatical after winning as well.
Alright, yeah. The way to do it, apparently.
It is like, so Conte might do it, but I don't know, maybe Conte, think about it, man. This Napoli, you're a legend there. And you know how to deal with lippy owners, so you shouldn't be scared.
No, I wouldn't think he would be scared.
Yeah, but also this might be discretion is the better part of valor.
Yeah, exactly.
But great stuff for Napoli. The Sky Blues winning the Serie A, snaps to them. Internazionale, both these two clubs, you got to give them A plus. Internazionale making a Champions League final, playing against PSG. I think a really good chance for them to win as well.
Yeah.
Like, PSG are probably the best team in Europe at the moment, but the Inter are capable of beating any side in Europe, in my opinion.
Exactly.
One of the most underrated, like, in terms of wage bill and how they perform in Europe, one of the most underrated sides.
Yeah.
Then we moved down. Atalanta coming in third place. Fantastic to see them back in the top four. obviously they won the Europa League last season for Gasperini, and
Yeah.
he's taken them to the Champions League again. It's a great performance for them. You love to see it. Atalanta play such an awesome style of football as well. Um, they're always fun to watch. And they're back, the Zebras, Juve,
Yeah.
fourth place. After much wailing and gnashing of teeth, finally pipping Roma from to get to that fourth place spot. Unfortunately, a unfortunately, excuse me, Roma couldn't keep up their momentum to stay. Claudio Ranieri back in Rome where he is beloved, but
Yeah.
you could see him there. Things, given how terrible things were at Roma behind the scenes, like close to getting bankrupt levels of bad, we gotta give it up to them for at least getting to the Europa League this season.
Yeah.
I think also this means them and Fiorentina are in the Europa League.
Google showing Florentina in the Conference League, but how correct that is, I'm not 100% sure.
That is like, I don't, because they are third in the coefficient, so that could be correct.
Yeah.
Because I think the top two are the only two that get like the full, they get to have they get to have two Europa League teams, and I think in theory, in theory you can have a max of 3 Europa League teams if you didn't have like the legacy spot, like for England, like they had last season.
Yeah.
And you have the Conference League, like, but I don't know. I'm gonna propose something. You tell me if you agree or disagree. I think if your country has 4 Champions League spots, you should not get a Conference League spot.
Yeah, I think that's probably. Yeah, I think we've mentioned this before about, having the Conference League be a true battleground and not having, the 6th, 7th, or 8th place Premier League team coming in. Say if there's a gap between them and the other people that are in this, or the, was it the 6th or 7th best La Liga team, or Serie A team, and things like these are decent teams that have chances in the Europa League or near there. It's like maybe just increase the Europa League spots a little bit and just find a way through that.
Lose a European spot. I think those teams should just go straight to the Europa League and basically just leave the Conference League for everybody who isn't a top 5 league.
Yeah, exactly. So give those clubs something to actually be able to win.
Yeah. But are we just rewarding mediocre teams in those leagues? Because the top teams in those leagues have to play against the hard guys, right?
Yeah. I mean, it comes down to what you're going for, right?
That's
like,
true.
What is the purpose of that? Is it just to have another one?
The purpose of this is for UEFA to earn money, and I guess having the big teams is what earns money.
Yeah, to be fair, the purpose is for UEFA to earn more money, and the setup allows for UEFA to earn more money. So, goals achieved, I guess.
Yeah, I figured out why Fiorentina are in the Conference League. I forgot Bologna won the Coppa Italia.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. Like, I looked on SoccerNet and was like, that explains it better than Google. Excellent.
Because like Bologna were, because usually Coppa Italia is won by a team in the European spots, obviously. That didn't happen. But Bologna has had a great season regardless, I think. They were in the Champions League last season. They win the cup this season, so you gotta... The only team in that going down to Bologna who I think would get like a see is AC Milan. They've had a terrible season by
Yeah.
their standards.
Yes, definitely.
Not even finishing in European spots.
No.
And maybe you could give Lazio that same thing. But Bologna going to Europe, Fiorentina in the Conference League, and like probably a good chance in the Conference League as well.
Yeah.
Roma in the Europa League. Why not Claudio Ranieri? I don't see why he couldn't do well in that competition as well
Yeah, exactly.
next season. And like the top four Serie A teams, like Inter are consistently getting through to the second rounds and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how Juve fare now that they're back. Atalanta always are consistent, and Napoli, yeah, that's the club who have to pick up the pace. I think they need. But given the current format of the Champions League as well, these guys, they should all make the next round.
Yes, definitely.
Um, Looking at that, but Italy once again proving to be the best league. It was still everything to play for in almost every sense of the word until the last day in the top of the table, and we had a real relegation battle. There was like Parma managing to stay up, thank God. Lecce, Empoli. Lecce also getting very close to being relegated, but then, Empoli unfortunately not making it through in the end, and Venezia.
Yeah.
Only Monza, okay, wait, little old Monza, the smallest club in Serie A last season, they finished to be relegated, and they were relegated pretty early, but still did better than Southampton.
Yeah, exactly.
Hint, hint.
Yeah.
And then we go to Liga number 4, the Bundesliga. Bayern Munich are back, baby.
Yeah. Harry Kane finally gets the trophy, I guess.
He finally gets a trophy, even though it's very much a shield.
Yeah.
And Bayer Leverkusen finishing second place. Good job for them. Back to Leverkusen.
Yeah.
As all things should be.
Yeah. We had the blip in the Matrix last year, but now we're back to normal service in the Bundesliga.
What really funny is like the German Football Federation were like, okay, because the Bundesliga rather, were like, okay, because you've got an undefeated season, like set the precedent, because when Arsenal were undefeated, the Premier League gave them a gold-plated Premier League trophy.
Yeah.
Which I think is fair enough.
Yeah,
Because
definitely.
it's like the last club since Arsenal, before Arsenal to do it, was Preston North End.
Yeah.
And like, I think to a point where the EFL could legitimately, grandfather and retroactively gift Preston a gold-plated old First Division trophy.
Yeah.
To make for that first, undefeated season. That would be fair enough to me as well. So the Bundesliga were like, well, we've never had an undefeated season either. You should get a gold plate to commemorate the fact that this was undefeated. And all these Bayern Munich fans were like, oh, we've done so much. How come we don't get it? It's like, this is the ultimate classic spoiled child.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I have like every console, but I want his Switch. But it's like, you already have but his Switch is gold plated. I want that.
You've got all these Switches at home. Look at them all. Yeah, but I don't have the gold-plated one.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was just it was funny to me that, to be fair, just a very vocal minority of Bayern Munich fans. I think most German football fans were just like, yeah, of course, you have to. Like,
Yeah. No,
what it was incredible.
Exactly.
Because my cousin's husband is like a die-hard Leverkusen fan, and he, I was in Bangladesh when Xabi Alonso was starting the season, and they were like still hadn't lost a game, and I was like, it's gonna be interesting to see how you guys screw up, and he's like, I know, right? It's gonna be so interesting. And he's like from Germany, right?
Yeah.
And when he, because he recently just had a daughter, and he bought her like obviously a Leverkusen onesie, and I was just like, look at her, she's just jumping on the bandwagon just because they're not Leverkusen anymore. And he like laughs, going, yeah, I know, right? Um, but looking at the table, I think Leverkusen finishing second had a really good Champions League campaign.
Yeah.
Can't complain. A for obviously the top two buyers.
Yeah.
The Eintracht Frankfurt finishing third place. Great campaign for them. I think another A. Borussia
Yeah.
Dortmund, despite having one of their poorest seasons, almost not making a Champions League spot, and that would have gotten them into a lot of trouble. They managed to finish fourth. Getting into 57, like you made the Champions League, so we gotta give you at least an A.
Yeah.
Minus, probably.
A minus, yeah. I mean, they did better than last year. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. And to also shout out to Stuttgart winning the DFB Pokal, so they get to be in the Europa League next season, along with Freiburg, who finished in sixth, and like a few seasons ago, Eintracht won the Europa League, so the Freiburg should be looking at that.
Yeah.
As something really achievable, and Freiburg are a really fun team to watch.
Yeah.
Interesting style of play, and then we got Mainz making it to the Conference League, so good job them. I think we can expect good things. Once again, like there's the usual suspects in the Conference League semi-finals. Like sometimes there's Bodo Glimt crashing the party, but most of the time it'll be like the club from Europe, the club from Spain, the club from England, and the club from either Germany or France.
Yeah.
It is usually how it plays out, but the staying the top four. Like I said, we're giving A's. The Freiburg, I think I'll also give them an A. This is like years of culmination play, spending within their means and getting into the Champions League spot.
Yeah.
Same with Mainz. Paping clubs like Leipzig, Bremen, Stuttgart, those traditional Gladbach, those traditional giants.
Yeah.
To get to a European spot, so that's a great achievement for them. I'll also shout out St. Pauli managing to not get relegated after getting promoted. Everybody's favorite leftist trans rights supporting football club.
Exactly.
And that's the German league as well. But small shout out to PSG. They've finally mixed the formula. They went anti-Galactico, sold all their best players, and now they're winning. Like they've done the reverse Real Madrid.
Yeah.
Like, they literally sold Messi, Neymar, Mbappe, or all three of those guys have left, and now they're like awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Insane.
Yeah, reverse Real Madrid.
I will say that there are problems with Liga. They had this huge rights deal come through for them, and then after COVID, the company Media Pro, which offered $1 billion for these rights, went bankrupt, and their long-standing partner Canal Plus didn't bid and ended up with Amazon basically getting them for 200 million. If you compare, that's like 20% of the market price.
Yeah.
And then Amazon didn't bid the season after that, and they almost had no bidders until DAZN. Okay, and then DAZN only offered they wanted $1 billion, and DAZN only offered 400 million, and they said that we'll only pay you half if we don't get 1.5 million subscribers, and DAZN only ends up with 300,000 subscribers. And let's be honest, that's because DAZN sucks.
Yeah.
Like, as an app, I thought about getting it for a week for free to watch the Europa League final, and I was just like, this is too hard. Why is it so difficult for me to sign on to you, and why don't you make it easy for me to be accidentally trapped into paying you money? It's insulting, is what it is.
Yeah.
But Paris Saint-Germain, they're they've done really well. They're in for potentially becoming the second club from Liga to win the Champions League in the history of the Champions League. So we'll see how that plays out. But we all know how PSG tend to do in European finals, don't we?
Yes, we do.
That's like a set piece.
Yeah.
So until it happens, we're just gonna sit here going, okay.
No, my sons are very keen to see how PSG mess this one up.
Yep. Mike, I think everybody's very keen to see how PSG mess this up.
Yeah.
Like in the previous final, at least you could be like, okay, Neymar was injured. Fair enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Neymar was injured. You lost to Thomas Tuchel's Chelsea. It was that was your chance, but your best player was injured, and he was awesome that season. Like if he had played that final, that might have been like a Ballon d'Or winning season for Neymar.
Yeah.
That wasn't to be.
Wasn't to be.
And finally, obviously, no episode of European Roundup is complete before we look at the Turkish Super League.
Yeah. Which I think they've actually got one game to go, maybe?
They do have one game to go, but I think Galatasaray have easily won the league.
Yeah.
But Jose Mourinho has managed to get Fenerbahce to second place, but they're not going to be happy. Gala did the double this season. They won the Turkish Cup as well, but Fenerbahce good 20 points behind Samsunspor, who finished third, and Besiktas finishing fourth. Every season of the Turkish league is eventful, and they're even more eventful when Jose Mourinho is in the league.
That is the way.
He even said recently, like, I pick my team by throwing coins in the air. Like, obviously sarcastically.
Obviously.
But,
But also,
like, I feel like Fener was his spiritual home, Jose's.
Ever since he joined there, it has definitely been the best fit. Like, yep, this is where you needed to be.
And like, to add insult to injury, like, the manager of Galatasaray, Solskjaer, right? Like the guy who replaced him.
It's hilarious.
No, it is not. It isn't Solskjaer. It's Okan Buruk. I think Solskjaer, sorry, Besiktas manager. I will double check that. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Yeah, Besiktas manager. So he managed to lead the team to fourth place. We look forward to seeing what Jose has done. Like,
I think he's got a great new quote is also, which I'm seeing here on X, which is after they lost to Hatterspor, I think was the game that just happened. Is that right? Yeah, so they just lost to Hatterspor today, or overnight, last night. His quote afterwards was, "In the last 7 years, I've played in 2 European finals. That means I have played in more finals in Europe over the last 7 years than Turkish football has seen in its entire history."
Yep.
Like, never stop, Jose, never stop.
Always, who can forget, like, already the new classic where when he asked the referee how he managed to red card him, and how he managed to look at the action if he was talking to him, and he was like, no, I saw it, I saw it while I was talking to you. He's like, well, he's clearly the best referee ever because he's got such great peripheral vision that he can look behind his head. And like this more and more, like Jose, this is where he was born to be.
Yeah.
He could also like just become Fener's like basketball team coach as well, and like water polo, cricket, whatever sports Fenerbahce plays.
Just all of them.
Yeah. And the club should just rebuild itself in the image of Jose Mourinho.
Yeah, exactly. It seems the best option, really.
But look, I think that's all we have time for today.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for listening, and look forward to hearing from you next time.
Catch you next time.
Well, that is the end. Thanks for listening all the way through.
If you liked what you heard, we have even more. 9642 Discord and a Buy Me a Coffee.
Pretty sure it's Buy Me a Beer.
Oh yeah, buy me a beer on buymeacoffee.com.
In both these places, you can talk to us, and we may even listen, especially if you do buy a said beer or coffee. I might still be confused.
Yes, we're easily bribed. All links are in the show notes below.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
This is on YouTube.